We'll be very brief because the exhibition is over there and you can have a look at it, and if you have any questions, I think we're still around. I actually made two parts, or have to present in two parts, because we had the decision was to actually make a sequential walkthrough through the exhibition and to have it work in a sequential way. Since the exhibition is loosely based or has borrowed this idea from the Futurama, there was a need to represent the actual Futurama exhibition in the first section. And we did that by using those old pictures of the Futurama and created the background with it. Those pictures you already saw before. And the reason why we did that is because we wanted to show how the Futurama has shaped pretty much by marketing the way we have to experience our cities today. And in order to further strengthen this effect, we took a couple of quotes by some car manufacturers, and by putting them out of context, you can actually see some of the brainwash happening, because if you compare that with your daily experiences, it all looks kind of ridiculous. And since we're living in this world that has been marketed in the past to us, we were interested in how has this changed our cities, and what's the possible outcome if we don't change anything. So here we have a view of the Ringstraße near the parliament, which kind of used to be the same as it is now, just with a different forms of mobility. By that time, Vienna had more inhabitants than today. And so you see there's a completely different, completely different use of the space. And we have, in the exhibition, we have a couple of other examples. And at the end of this first section, there's a dystopian view of Vienna that we thought necessary because it's the possible event if we continue to live and accept the Futurama. But the intent of the exhibition was to actually avoid this possible outcome, which explains why this room has an exit into the exhibition.
Okay, then I will take over. We have then a few other parts of the exhibition. The first is this big infographic you've all seen about the age of oil and this time we're living in, and which is slowly coming to an end, and which leads to the question what comes after that. And because the goal was to design for Vienna 2050, we kind of looked into ways how to design for this future, and how to design for a future with other systems of mobility, and how would you travel in them, and what would it enable, and what would be harder. And so we came up with this idea to kind of develop an abstract box of tools. You have these measures you can apply, and you can test, and you can apply to demo zones, and then slowly, gradually, to enable the transition to go smooth, kind of let them spread over the whole city. And as a background because the 10th district is this year the focus district, we have the 10th district as a background of our panel, and we look on one hand at the tools, and on the other hand we look at the actual application, kind of the zones where you could work with those tools. And we hope those tools to be in a way not very specific only to Vienna or the 10th district, but to be more general planning principles, digital strategies. There comes in things about what we heard already about energy, distributed energy systems and all of that. And in the end, it comes down to some very architectural measures like those ideas we adapted and redeveloped and looked at other cities, like these systems of kind of forming special new forms of typologies, which lead to new forms of living probably. So to have a pleasurable post-carbon future and not only a kind of grim one, yeah.
Okay, then there's the third section, and it's called "We Have Seen the Future." And I maybe ask you a question before I start this presentation about the future. Who of you has thought that Marie-Hilfer-Straße will be working out and will look like this as is it now and will work? 1, 2, 3, it's all the designers, okay. Who of you thought that it would not work out? It's a stupid idea. Nobody. That's interesting. That's not normal, actually. So we have seen the future. This is a part of, we are all planners and architects and designers, and we thought about, we are planning things for the next 10 or 15, maximum 20 years. But what about if you look into the year 2050, 2100, on a very global view and on a very personal view? What will happen to our lives when we can't move around as we do today? As we do with cars or public transport or bicycles, or as we walk in this surroundings. So we thought about, we are really, really, really dependent on fossil fuels, 100% dependent, even in the cities. And even if you walk to your workplace, or even if you cycle to your workplace. So we have an installation, it's made out of old windows, and you can look at it and you can see normal projects you use every day, like your glasses or like your contact lenses, a book or your sport shoes, which are all in these boxes, and you can see the CO2 offset in these boxes. So every product you use every day, everything you touch every day has a CO2 offset, and we are 100% dependent on these fossil fuels. So that's one part of our, we have seen the future. So looking into our life now, what we use every day and how dependent we are. And the other part is thinking about how much tons we use on, or how much fossil fuel we use and how much CO2 every person in Austria uses and produces. And the other part is a very personal view. We did an interview with someone who was born in 2015. And in this interview, it starts in about 1950, where this grandmother was born. And she tells us about how it was in the 1950s, how it was during the oil crisis in 1973, where you couldn't drive your car, especially on certain days, and how is it now and how it will be in 2050. And about these cars, these autonomous cars, we don't believe in them. We think that this will be public transport systems, as it is now. So we also thought about how about China will break down, political circumstances. We are living in a very uncertain time. How about political circumstances that influence our mobility? So that's also in the interview, and we hope you listen to it.
And at the end of the exhibition, as you're about to leave, we again looked a bit at the Futurama. And what the Futurama had, after you saw this large-scale top-down model, you left this kind of elevator and you stepped out into the future, because they had this huge mock-up of a modern crossing back then that would take you kind of into, this is how the streets could look like. And our idea was to recreate the same kind of effect. Still, we had about 200 million euros less of budget than the Futurama. So we had to do it in an image. and to kind of create a connection with the focus district and also with the event here, we just took a street crossing right down the street once you leave the Anker-Brothalle, which you see here. Those are actually two panoramas stitched together, but they kind of work. And yeah, we applied our ideas onto this. And one thing that was quite important is to not make it too specific, actually, because we don't know how each of those fixes is going to look like and how it actually will look like, but at the same time we want to create kind of a desirable image that you can imagine yourself being a part of, and this is what we did here. And I think it works quite well when you stand in there. Once you realize it's this crossing down the street, it really makes you thinking about how our streets could look like. Thank you.